Today I'm cooking up some Halloween recipes from Betty Crocker's cookbook. This particular version was published in 1978. Now, does this cookbook have a Halloween section of recipes? No. So what I'm actually doing is I've taken a few recipes from this book and I am going to do a little bit of a Halloween twist on them. So you can follow along with these particular recipes, but the things that I'm going to be doing today can be applied to a lot of your other favorite recipes too. In case you're curious about my hat, I did make it. I will link the pattern in the description down below. It is a pattern that was created by Keiko Lynn. If you haven't seen her content, please go look at it now. Go check out her Instagram. She is, as my grandma would put it, just darling. So anyway, I'm gonna get on with my very first recipe for Halloween stuffed peppers. I'm gonna be following this stuffed green peppers recipe, but I am subbing in orange peppers because Halloween. So the first thing I'm gonna do is prepare the filling for my stuffed peppers. I am cutting this recipe in half and I'm making 3 peppers instead of 6. So the filling begins with a half a pound of ground beef. And I am just gonna cook that and brown it until it is cooked through. This is about halfway cooked and I'm gonna add some dehydrated onion flakes. The recipe calls for fresh onion. I'm just using these, I'm subbing these in instead of fresh. And so that was about half a tablespoon. And I'm just gonna continue to let this meat cook through. And now I'm gonna add the rest of the ingredients for the filling, which is about half a can of this 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. You wanna set a little bit of this aside so that you have some to put on the top. I have some cooked white rice. This is half a cup. I may add a little bit more of the rice. I have some extra that I cooked up, mostly because this filling is supposed to be enough for 3 peppers, but some of my peppers are really big. So we'll see. Also gonna add just a pinch of garlic salt and half a teaspoon of regular salt. That is everything. That is all that is in this filling. Do I think this is seasoned enough? Probably not. But I want to follow this recipe and just kind of see where it takes me. These kind of feel like a pizza version of stuffed peppers, especially because you top them with mozzarella later in the recipe. So I would probably add, I don't know, a little bit of oregano or Italian seasoning or something. But like I said, this is my first time trying the recipe and I would like to just try it as is and see what happens. So I'm gonna just let this filling heat through a little bit on the stove and then it's time to actually put this filling in the peppers. The oven is preheating, the filling is all put together, and now I'm gonna show you how I prepped my orange peppers. So you can see I have 3 orange peppers here. I tried to choose ones that would stand up. It didn't, I did my best. It might not be a bad idea to put the peppers in the dish and see like what's the pepper's best side as far as carving goes. So you want to cut off a thin layer at the top, like the top of the pepper, so that you can remove the membrane and the seeds. I'm doing this using a really tiny, thin boning knife. I'm also going to use this very same knife to carve the features of the pumpkins / peppers. I suppose you could also use one of those very tiny pumpkin carving sets for carving details into your pumpkins. That would work too. Any knife with sort of like a tiny little end to it, tiny little tip will work just fine. And now we've come to this stage. It's time to fill the peppers. I preheated my oven to 350 degrees as directed in the recipe. There is a step that I omitted, mostly because I felt like it was a little unnecessary for what I'm trying to do here. If you're not making stuffed peppers with pumpkin faces like I am, you could probably do this step. So the recipe actually says to boil these peppers for 15 minutes before you stuff them and bake them. If you want your peppers to be super soft, I'm sure that's a great idea. In this case, I feel like between a boiling time of 15 minutes and a baking time of an hour total, that's a lot. I feel like my peppers are just gonna like get too soft and disintegrate. So we're gonna play some of the cook time by ear here. I'm skipping that particular boiling step. I saved the tops of the peppers. I don't know if I'm gonna bake those with those on. Probably not. It's really just kind of for appearances at this point. I think this one's my favorite. I managed to put a little tooth. I ended up adding like 2 more tablespoons of rice to this just to kind of just kind of bulk it up a little bit. Like I said, I don't know how far this filling is gonna go. A couple of these peppers are pretty large. We're just gonna kind of get it in there to the top, patting it down gently. Oh gosh, some of the rice is sticking out of his mouth. It looks like a little tooth. One pepper has been filled. And if I have to redistribute some of this filling, that's totally fine. It smells really, really good. Like I said, not a ton of seasoning in here. If you like your filling to be a little more zesty, you can certainly add more spices and more seasonings. I think we're almost there. I may need to swipe a little filling from these two peppers. We might be just making it. I'm gonna set that down, kind of scrape this. This little spoon is from Get It Right. It's the same company that makes the spatulas that I like. So it's actually quite good for scraping things, like scraping a pan out, because it's kind of like a spatula and a spoon. If I can find it, I'll link it, but I really like it. I think I got this one at Trader Joe's for Christmas a couple years ago. Smooth those out. Do I have the faces facing out? Well, yes, the camera is telling me that yes, indeed I do. How cute. How cute are those? Okay, that was fun. That was fun. So we're gonna revisit the cook time on these again. It says to cover with foil and bake in a 350-degree oven for 45 minutes, uncover, cook for 15 minutes longer, and then sprinkle with cheese. So what I think I'm gonna do, I am gonna cover them. I think I'm gonna start with like 30 minutes at 350 degrees and then uncover them, sprinkle the cheese, put them back in the oven for 15 more minutes so the cheese like melts and gets a little bubbly. We're gonna try that. I'm gonna kind of like test the doneness of the peppers in between those two steps. But again, these are supposed to be like cute little faces, and I feel like they're gonna disintegrate and fall apart and like get all droopy, which also could be fun for Halloween, but I really would like to make these stay rather pumpkin-y. Okay, so 30 minutes at 350. I'm gonna go ahead and check these. Let's see, I have a knife here, so I'm just gonna kind of at the back of them. Oh yeah, those are starting to get really soft. I'm pretty glad that I didn't do that boiling for 15 minutes kind of thing. So the next step is adding the tomato sauce and the cheese. In the original recipe, it actually did say to put the tomato sauce on here and let it bake. So I should maybe have done that. But as you can tell, I'm just kind of mostly following these recipes and winging it at some points as far as like bake time goes. So I'm gonna add the tomato sauce now. It's just a thin layer, so it'll heat through. And now I'm gonna add my mozzarella cheese. I had whole milk mozzarella that I shredded up pretty fine, but use what you have. Use what you want. Oh, it almost looks like they have hair. These are ready to go back into the oven for 15 minutes at 350, uncovered. Don't put that foil back on. This is 15 minutes after I put the tomato sauce and the cheese on top. I think they look so cute. They really do look cooked a bit. I'm just gonna, yeah, they're pretty soft. Okay, I'm super excited to give these a taste. I'm gonna go for this like back one because he's a little unstable right now. So we'll try that one first. And the rest will probably end up being additional lunches this week. Let me see if I can rate him. Okay, no, I can't. But you know, there's his little face. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm gonna cut into this. The cheese is quickly running away. They're still like ever so slightly tender crisp. So if you like these cooked more, you can definitely bake them for longer. For me, I kind of like stuffed peppers in this way. Soft, but not completely mushy. I have a vague idea of what this is gonna taste like. We're gonna make that a smaller bite. That's a really big bite. Cut that down. Here we go. A decent, but very basic stuffed pepper. Not enough seasoning for me, to be honest. If you wanted to make these and spice them up, you definitely could do that. You might start with subbing in some pizza sauce instead of the plain tomato sauce, adding your own seasonings. But if you like a plainer flavor, like this is definitely for you. I mean, it's ground beef, it's rice, it's tomato sauce, a little bit of garlic salt, and there you go. But I think they're a lot of fun. I mean, this is definitely something that you could do with any stuffed pepper recipe. Use your favorite, cut little faces out of the peppers, you know, and just have yourself a fun little Halloween treat. I decided to try out this party cheese ball recipe because I love a cheese ball, but I am going to add a little bit of Halloween fun to it. So cheese balls, I love them. I think that they are such a fun addition to a party or like a little snack buffet or what have you. You can make a big one, that's what I'm gonna do, but you can also take a cheese ball recipe and sort of make little tiny individual ones. Either one, delicious, so I can't wait to try this one. So this recipe starts with 2 8-ounce packages of very soft cream cheese. Put that in the bowl. And 4 ounces of blue cheese. We'll see how this one turns out. I've never had a cheese ball made with blue cheese, but I like it. About 4 ounces of finely shredded cheddar cheese. There's our cheese breakdown. You know, everything has been sitting at room temperature for a little bit. The cream cheese especially needs to be very soft here. So I'm gonna take my hand mixer and mix that together. Well mixed, bowl has been scraped. That's what it looks like so far. We have a couple of more ingredients to go. I have a tablespoon of Lea and Perrins. Also, I have like a tiny bit of cream cheese on my arm. Okay, we took care of it. And then I have a 1/4 cup of, oh, there's a deer outside. Anyway, sorry. So the recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of finely chopped onion. I went a 1/4 cup of green onion because I like green onions. I think green onions are really good in a cheese ball too. So I'm gonna go in and mix one more time. Everything is very well mixed and it is very, very soft. So I'm actually gonna pop this into the fridge for about an hour before I shape it. I let this go for more like a couple of hours in the fridge. I just needed it to firm up so that I could shape it. And as you may know, if you have made a cheese ball before, the flavors improve over time. So once I shape this, I'm gonna refrigerate it again before I even try it. There are several ways that you can shape a cheese ball. I'm gonna use some plastic wrap, just the same piece that I used to cover this bowl. You can also use damp hands to do it. I mean, it's gonna be messy, pretty much either way. Especially if you are making the tiny little cheese balls, damp hands are kind of the way to go as, you know, rolling it in. And you may need to kind of like refresh your hands a little bit. So we're gonna see how we do. I have most of it here. There we go. I'm gonna scrape this little extra part. Oh, this is gonna be a very large cheese ball. I could have probably cut this recipe in half. So basically you just want this to be round. The first step in shaping this is just to make it round. So let's bring like the sides up here and just kind of gently shape it with your hands. It's not gonna be perfect and that's okay. Unless you have a magical cheese ball shaping machine. Maybe you do, I don't know. I don't know your life. You know, and pumpkins are a little wonky anyway, aren't they? We're gonna do a little bit of further shaping as well. The original recipe says to roll the ball in some finely chopped parsley, but I want it to be orange, right? So I'm gonna use some finely shredded cheddar cheese. I've also seen recipes where people roll this in some very fine Cheez-It cracker crumbs, and then it turns orange. And oh, that is such a good idea. I kind of wish I had like seen that before I bought my ingredients. Definitely something to try next time. Okay, so I'm gonna unwrap this a little bit. Actually, all the way, I don't know why I said that. We're gonna plop it in here. Like I said, your hands are gonna get messy either way. So just be prepared for that. So I'm gonna start patting some of the cheese in there and kind of like applying a little pressure to get it to stick. And you can kind of reshape this with your hands a little bit as you go. And it does help to have like a surface or a plate or cutting board or something kind of like nearby. Probably, honestly, yep, I'm spilling cheese. It's okay. I probably could have gotten a bigger bowl for this cheese. But we're here now, aren't we? We're just gonna do what we can. We're getting there. Oh, got some bare areas here. So I wanna make sure those get covered. That's like the size of an actual like pie pumpkin almost. Okay, I am pretty pleased with the coverage on that so far. If I need to cover a few bare spots, I can do that. Again, I have my plate and I'm gonna get a new piece of cling film, plastic wrap, whatever you call it. And I wanna make sure it's big enough to cover the entire cheese ball. If you have to do 2 pieces, depending on how big your cheese ball is, definitely you might consider that. I'm gonna transfer this to the cling wrap. Make sure it's nice and round and pumpkin-y. I made my pumpkin kind of flat. I like those like flatter kind of pumpkins. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Next time though, if I do this again, I definitely want to try those Cheez-It cracker crumbs. That would be so good. All right, so here's what you do. Here's what I'm gonna do. I've never quite done this like this before. Just wrap it like you will, like we did before pretty much. Make sure that it's well covered. You might need to just kind of finesse your plastic wrap a little. Finesse, come on. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Might want to twist it and just kind of like make sure it's pretty tight. It's still pliable, so you can kind of like reshape it if it gets out of shape a little. This is gonna be charming. You got your cheese ball. Now what? Now what is rubber bands? I told my husband that I needed rubber bands for a recipe. Definitely not something I've said before. I need rubber bands for a recipe. I'm trying to find some like wider ones. So you just start putting the rubber bands around here because that's gonna make your little like pumpkin indentations. Yeah, and you might need to toy with the type of rubber bands you use, the thickness. Some of these are kind of like small, you know, I'd go like a little bit bigger. I don't even know if you can see those. Just because you don't want it to get like too tight. We're just gonna keep shaping as well. Oh wow, this is gonna be something. I don't know how many, maybe like, let's try a third rubber band and see what that gets us, see where we are. You can do this with butcher's twine as well. I'm basically just basing all of this on stuff that I found on Pinterest, and everybody has a slightly different method. This is just the one that I'm trying for the first time. So if you find something else that will get you the same results and you want to do that, do that. The good thing about this is that it can be generally fall too. It's not just for Halloween. You can do it for Thanksgiving or just like, hey, it's fall, let's have a party. So I'm gonna show you from the bottom so you can see. That's what you want it to look like. I think 3 rubber bands is about right for what I'm looking for. Now you need to let this chill and firm up before you take the rubber bands off. It's getting later in the day, so I may not come back to this until tomorrow, and then I will give it a try. I think it's just gonna end up looking so cute. I'm so excited. I have some cheese ball updates. As I was getting dinner around yesterday, I noticed that the cheese ball looked a little, I don't know, bald. Here, I'll show you what I mean, because it still looks like that right now, but I'm gonna fix it. So what was happening is the rubber bands that I used were a little too small, and it was actually, they were kind of cutting into the cheese ball too much and causing some like stretching to happen, I guess. It was like making the cheese go into the little crevices. I decided to go ahead and cut the rubber bands off last night, and it worked just fine. I mean, I still got the little indentations I wanted. If I did this again, I would probably use bigger rubber bands, like bigger in circumference, or make a smaller cheese ball. This is a very large cheese ball. You know, I like how the shape turned out. I'm gonna like re-sculpt it a little bit, and I need to do a little bit of patching on those bald spots. So I did save a little bit of cheese from yesterday in case of cheese emergency. So I'm just gonna kind of like pat that in a little bit. Overall, I think I'm pleased with the shape. And I did leave this in the refrigerator overnight. So the flavors are probably in a very good place right now. And you can kind of see where I've patched it up. If I were actually serving this to people, I might wrap it back up and kind of refrigerate it so that the cheese would kind of flatten out. But I'm fine with it. I think it looks cute still. The basic shape, pretty identifiable as a pumpkin, but I have one more finishing touch to definitely make it look like a pumpkin. I saved some of the stems from those orange peppers I used yesterday. Don't worry, I did cut off the actual pepper part and put it in the freezer so I can use it for something. But I did save the stems because, I mean, it makes like a perfect pumpkin stem, doesn't it? So now I just have to add crackers to this plate and then I'll give it a taste. I think this turned out pretty cute. I am very happy with it, even if it's not perfect. There are no perfect pumpkins, are there? So I guess the only thing left for me to do is give it a taste. I hate to even cut into this because it's so dang cute. I'm gonna try a Ritz cracker first. I have just like some wheat thins and some Ritz crackers. Ooh, it looks good. Sorry, I wanted to make sure I didn't have crumbs and stuff all over my face. That's very good. I really like cheese balls anyway, and I think they're a great party food, appetizer, snack, something you can share at a gathering because you can make them ahead of time. You know, you can make them the day before I have even heard of people freezing cheese balls. Actually, in reality, what's going to happen to this one is I'm probably going to cut it up into smaller cheese balls and like give some away, maybe freeze a little bit and see, because I mean, it's gigantic, isn't it? Now the cheese ball itself has a really delicious flavor. I know there are people who really do not like that funkiness of blue cheese, but it kind of mellows out a bit, probably because it's mixed with like lots of cream cheese, lots of cheddar cheese. So the flavor of the blue cheese is there. It's just subtle. It's one of those things where it's like, there's something about this cheese ball that tastes really good, but I can't quite put my finger on it. I even think people who are adamantly against blue cheese might even like this one. But again, you can form whatever cheese ball you want into a pumpkin. I just wanted to try this one from the Betty Crocker cookbook. It just wouldn't be Halloween without a sweet treat. So I am gonna bake up some pumpkin cookies. Now I thought for sure that these pumpkin cookies were gonna be the very same pumpkin cookies that appear in Betty Crocker's cookie book from 1963. Lo and behold, I was wrong. These are different. Okay, so let's just get going. I have preheated my oven to 375 degrees. Mixed sugar, pumpkin shortening, and orange peel. So I actually already put my sugar in my mixing bowl. It is in there. It's just a cup of white sugar. And then I have 1 cup of pumpkin. This is solid pack pumpkin, by the way. This is not pumpkin pie filling. There is a difference. 1/2 of a cup of shortening. If I have to use shortening for anything, I'm gonna use Crisco sticks because they just measure so much more nicely. We've got a tablespoon of orange peel. And I just wanted to shout out my little microplane Flexi Zester again. I do have a regular microplane, but this is so nice for getting zest from citrus because you zest it here and then you can take this top part off. You can still see that it has some zest on it. And it collects in this little portion here. So nice. So I will go ahead and link that if you're interested in checking one out. My mom actually found this one for me, probably, I'm guessing at Marshall's. So go look at Marshall's too if you don't want to order online. We've got the first few ingredients in there and now I'm gonna mix them up. That is what we have. I wanted to make sure things were very, very well mixed. I mixed with my hand mixer for a few minutes and I gotta show you my very cute spatula, Halloween themed. This was a gift from my mom. Yes, I'm 43 years old and I still get Halloween presents from my mom. I don't know where she got it. The brand is Cook with Color. So if I can find one, I'll link it, but you know, you might want to just keep an eye out. I think Walmart sells this particular brand of spatula. It is not heat resistant, but it is very cute and it is perfect for baking. Stir in flour, baking powder, baking soda, salt, and cinnamon. I've got all of those measured out. This is 2 cups of flour. I'm gonna do a little bit of a mix before I add the rest of that. Just gently. I'll probably end up kind of doing the final bit of mixing with my spatula, but I am following what Betty's saying in here. She didn't say to sift it or anything. So a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of baking powder, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Okay, I have one more ingredient to add, so I am going to switch over to a spatula to put that in and kind of do the final mix on these cookies. The final ingredient I have mini chocolate chips. So the original recipe says nuts and raisins. There's a variation at the end of the recipe that says that you can sub in chocolate chips or the raisins. I didn't want the nuts because I do want to give these to some people who can't eat nuts, so I thought I would just sub in mini chips for all of it. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm excited. I like pumpkin and chocolate chip together. So these are gonna have pumpkin, orange, cinnamon, and chocolate chip. A lot of flavor, but we'll see. And these are gonna make tiny little cookies. They look very Halloween with the chocolate chips, I will say, because of that like orange and kind of like deep brown, almost black. I'm kind of debating on whether or not I wanna glaze all of these because there's like a light brown sugar like glaze that you put on these, but with the chocolate, I might not need to, so we'll see. I feel good about this. So I think it's time to scoop them. I have a couple of cookie sheets here. We'll set up for scooping. So these cookie sheets are new to me. FabFitFun sent me one of their fall boxes and a set of 2 cookie sheets in this nice little spatula were inside. And this is the first time I'm gonna try them. They are nice and heavy. This is not sponsored. FabFitFun just wanted to send me one of their fall boxes, and I have bought boxes from them before. It is kind of fun if you have some things in there that you see that you might want to try. A great way to try new brands and new products. I have a link if you want to use it to purchase your own box. They're going to be having the winter box next. Kind of excited. They're like a little smaller than my other cookie sheets. Kind of excited to try them out. What do we got here, Betty? Drop dough by teaspoonsful onto ungreased cookie sheet. Bake until light brown, 8 to 10 minutes. So I have my tiny scoop, a littlest scoop. That's why I thought the mini chocolate chips would be a good choice here because they kind of fit better. Oh yeah, those are so little. So I'll scoop, I don't know how much they're gonna spread, so I'm not gonna fill up the sheet here too much. We're gonna test it out. Also, I noticed there were no eggs in this recipe, which had me going back to the cookbook and reading the ingredients list and the recipe multiple times, but no eggs to be found. I wanted to do more than one, but not like a full sheet. So I'm gonna pop these in the oven for 8 to 10 minutes. I'll let you know exactly how long they needed to bake for me. Okay, folks, that is what they were looking like exactly 8 minutes in. Slightly browned on the top. They look set, and I'm supposed to immediately remove these to a cooling rack. I'm also thinking, like, now that I know kind of what they're looking, ooh, that was beautiful. That came off like nothing. Okay, well, ooh, yeah, you can see the bottom too. Now that I'm looking at them, I kind of don't want to put a glaze on them because I love how they look with those little chocolate chips. And I also feel like it might be a little too much flavor. You know, there's already a lot of flavors going on in here. So I have to let these cool completely before I give them a taste. But I think that taste test is gonna be my final decision maker on whether or not I wanna put any kind of icing or glaze on these. Right, here are my teeny tiny cookies. I don't wanna move them around too much because they're on a wire rack. They did not all fit on here. So I removed some of the already cooled ones to a plate so that I could, you know, fill this the rest of the way up. My kitchen smells amazing. Usually a kitchen smells amazing when you're baking cookies, unless you've done something wrong. I love the appearance. I love a tiny cookie, and I feel like a lot of vintage cookie recipes make tiny cookies, which is good for me. But I do think they look very Halloween because they're orange, and then they have those chocolate chips, which makes me think of a jack-o'-lantern. Appearance-wise, I am so happy with them. I'm gonna taste one and then decide if I actually wanna make the glaze or not. I'm leaning toward no, just because I think with the addition of the chocolate chips, that adds a lot of good sweetness. And there's also a lot of other flavors in there. We have orange, we have pumpkin, we have cinnamon. So the glaze may not be necessary in this case and may make more sense if you're just doing like the nuts and raisins version of this cookie. Okay, which one do I want? This one's a little messier, so I'm gonna go for that. I always go for the ones that are less than perfect because the perfect ones I give to someone else. Okay, that's very soft. Oh, it's nice. Yeah, these are either like 1 or 2 bite cookies. They're tiny. Okay, these are very orange forward. I taste the pumpkin and I taste the cinnamon, but it's much more subtle than that orange. You either really have to like orange to enjoy these, or I would either reduce or leave out that orange zest. It does have a very intense flavor, and there was a whole tablespoon of it in this recipe. I think they're delicious. I think they taste really good, and I think that they don't really need the glaze the way that I made them. I'm gonna leave them as is. Another thing that I kind of came to realize after thinking about it while I was scooping and baking all these cookies is that these are accidentally vegan. I am not myself vegan, but I do like to experiment with vegan baking, and I'm always delighted to find a recipe that is like accidentally vegan. You know, it's not intended to be like for specifically like in a vegan cookbook, but it just is vegan the way it is. To make these vegan, don't use the chocolate chips I used. Either use plant-based or switch back to those raisins and nuts, and then make sure that you use organic sugar. These are great. I think a lot of people would enjoy them, especially like these would look very cute on like a cookie table or like a little, I don't know, if you're having tea or something, like a little cookie tower or something, and they're small, you know, so you can eat more of them if you want. I think this is a great recipe if you like a soft, tiny little cookie. This version of Betty Crocker's cookbook was published in 1978. And I say this version because if you're watching my videos, if you're a fan of my channel, you probably know that Betty has published a lot of cookbooks. And yes, I know Betty Crocker is not real. I do have to say that sometimes and remind people that I like to be a little sarcastic and talk about Betty as though she were real. Betty Crocker to me is like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. You know, she lives on in my heart. Before I get into this book, I did want to kind of like touch on another book, and that's this version of Betty Crocker's cookbook. So I cooked from this one, which says New and Revised. So this one looks similar, but is not the same. So this is actually like a 20th printing of the 1969 version, okay? Here's where we get a little complicated. This version is the revised version of this. So you're gonna get some of the same recipes in both. You might not get all of them, and they might be in different places. So I'm just telling you because, and I bring all of this up because sometimes there is confusion about the books that I use. Yes, you know, the same book can be reprinted many, many times, but if it says it's like a new version or a revised version, that's likely gonna be at least a little bit different. But you know, Betty, she likes to reuse recipes sometimes. I have this beautiful copy. I say it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful, and it's a binder. Oh my goodness, you know how I feel about a binder copy of a cookbook. This is a 5-ring binder, my favorite edition of any of these kind of like catch-all big cookbooks that have a lot of different courses, different types of recipes, you know, desserts, salads, vegetables, lunches, dinners, casseroles, meats, etc. This one reminds me a little bit of the McCall's cookbook, not because it looks the same, but the McCall's cookbook, the yellow version, I have the yellow and the green. It also came in blue and red. They all have herbs and spices printed on the inside of the front and back cover. This one also has the tabs. That's another thing I love about these binder style cookbooks, is that they have these handy tabs that make it very easy to flip to a specific section of a book. This page is not super secure in here, so I'm gonna be careful. We have some really wonderful photographs trying to avoid that glare for you. It says Confidence from Betty Crocker's Cookbook. And it's, I think this might be, are these, yeah, I think these photographs were taken in one of the original Betty Crocker kitchens. They're so cool. I love the red cabinetry. I do love a retro looking kitchen through any decade, you know? I think I just love too many things. So let's look at some pictures of the food. We have, what is this, meats and main dishes. So you're gonna get your beef, your pork, fish. Sometimes they go ahead and put like poultry in the meat section as well. I don't see a separate section for poultry, so it's likely gonna be in here. Ooh, they even have cheese. Oh my gosh, look at this. Can I just get like a poster of this? All these cheeses, my goodness. They've got it all. They have them sorted into soft, semi-soft, firm to hard, very hard cheeses. I will probably eat any of these. Love cheese. They also have egg dishes in here. Whoa, sorry. These glossy pages sometimes do get a bit of a glare. And they even have a special section on freezer dinners. I'll show you that photo too. You got freezer dinners that are kind of homemade, and you can make them in your own little foil trays like a TV dinner. You can kind of see a shift as we go through the 70s and into the early 80s to like freezer meals, make-ahead meals. I mean, those things I'm sure were kind of available in other decades as well, but you see this shift to more emphasis on those things. More women were entering the workforce and working outside the home while still being expected to stay on top of the responsibilities of preparation of meals and keeping their family fed. Anything that could help in that regard, so making some things ahead, freezing them. And slow cookers also became very popular in the mid 70s into the 80s. I still love slow cookers. If you haven't watched my slow cooker videos, my recent ones, I'll link those in the description down below. Any type of appliance or process that could kind of like help with meal preparation. What else do we have? Let's go look at some more fun photos. I could spend a lot of time on this. And I'm actually in the process of editing the cooking footage for this Halloween video, and I am very well aware of how long it is. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much. Here are some vegetables. I kind of like how they've formatted a lot of these photos into rectangles, squares, whatever. These are just like 9 orderly boxes. Also, apologies, the weather's doing some very interesting things, so the lighting changes, they're gonna be very evident. Oh, here we are, desserts. We've gotta love desserts. We have a bundt cake, we have some fruit tarts and some cookies. Don't those look appetizing? I don't see a lot of illustrations here. The only illustrations I'm really seeing, you know, the non-photographs, it's sketches for like a demonstration purpose, like how to cut these cakes into the right shapes. And these are the cakes that they're kind of showing too, at least some of them. Coconut chews, I made these. I actually made these coconut chews in a previous video where I was collaborating with some other people on the 1971 Betty Crocker recipe card library. I attempted to even like make my photograph in the thumbnail look like that. It's another thing I'll link if you haven't watched it. But lots and lots of cookies. I kind of wanted to go through and see exactly how many of these appear in Betty Crocker's cookie book. To my surprise, the pumpkin cookies I made were not the same ones in the cookie book. I was very, very certain that they would be, and I was absolutely wrong. Ooh, candy and sweet snacks. Yeah, that's a little section in here. I think these would be very nice to be given as gifts around the holidays. We've got Divinity, peanut brittle, 3-minute fudge, another classic from Betty Crocker. But let's talk about the recipes I made today. As I stated at the beginning of this video, I chose 3 recipes from this book that were not specific to Halloween necessarily, but things that I could apply a little bit of a Halloween twist to. The pumpkin cookies I just kind of made as is. Because they're pumpkin cookies, of course they're fall. I can make those Halloween. The other 2 recipes I cooked, the cheese ball and the stuffed peppers, I did have a little bit of fun with those and made them a little bit extra Halloween. So the first recipe I cooked, these were a recipe for stuffed green peppers, but of course, who cares? You can swap in whatever color of peppers you want. And I chose orange peppers so that I can make them into jack-o'-lanterns. This stuffed pepper recipe is super basic. Probably not seasoned enough for most of you. But again, I wanted to try it as is and see where it went, you know? It's a good base, but it definitely needs more herbs and seasoning and things like that. So you can kind of take this and add oregano, add more garlic, add what you want to it, spice it up. Or, you know, if you just want to make jack-o'-lantern peppers with your favorite stuffed pepper recipe, you can also go ahead and do that. I did reheat one of the peppers today for lunch, and I cut it up into pieces before I reheated it because just like putting it in the microwave whole, I knew it probably wasn't going to heat through very quickly. And it was a great lunch. A little plain, but it tasted really good, and the pepper even got a little bit softer in the microwave. Would I make this again? Possibly, but only with some modifications to the flavors. I would definitely make jack-o'-lantern stuffed peppers again though. Those were really cute. I was pretty happy with how they turned out. Next, I made a party cheese ball that I shaped into a pumpkin. Oh, I was so pleased with how this turned out. I thought it was so cute, and the flavor of the cheese ball itself was really good, really delicious. I actually just snacked on a little bit of that right before I started filming. So good. Just This recipe included some crumbled blue cheese, and I know not everyone likes that, but the flavor does mellow out a lot. You're not getting that like really sharp funkiness. I suppose, you know, depending on the type of blue cheese you use, you could kind of like up that flavor if you want. I just used some like crumbled blue cheese that I found at Meijer. I didn't get anything too fancy. The combination of flavors on this one, I enjoyed quite a bit. So it was cream cheese, cheddar cheese, blue cheese, green onion, and lean parents. Great combination, only improved with time. I assembled this yesterday, so I refrigerated it overnight, and it's even better today. That's kind of how things go with cheese balls. You do need to let those flavors kind of sit for a little bit, at least a few hours. You can make any cheese ball you want into the shape of a pumpkin. I just wanted to try one from Betty Crocker. I'm glad I did though, because I would make this recipe again. No modifications on my part, really. And finally, I made those pumpkin cookies. I didn't really do too much to them to make them very Halloween. I subbed in mini chocolate chips for the nuts and raisins. That was a suggestion made in the recipe, actually, that you could do that. I used mini chocolate chips. Definitely the way to go because these cookies are very, very small. When I first tasted them after they'd cooled from the oven, the orange flavor was very intense, but it has kind of settled down a little bit over the last few days. I still have some of these. I gave a few away to some people, but I do still have some of these, and they are still very fresh tasting. They're very good. They're soft. They're really, really soft, kind of cake-like. They almost remind me of like a pumpkin mini muffin. But the orange flavor, while it was very intense the first day that I baked them, it kind of mellowed, and you can taste more of that like cinnamon and pumpkin too. And as I said, these cookies are accidentally vegan. They weren't intended to be a vegan recipe necessarily, but they are. They don't have any eggs in them. There's no dairy in them. If you want to make sure they're vegan, you want to swap out the regular sugar for like an organic sugar. There's a refining process used in some sugars that involve an animal product. So if you're kind of questioning that, if you're trying to make these for someone who does follow a vegan diet, you might want to just double check on the type of sugar that you're using. If you're going to use chocolate chips, use plant-based chocolate chips. You just want to make sure there's like no dairy in there. Or you can go ahead and put the nuts and raisins back in place of those chocolate chips that I used. But it's always fun to find a recipe like that. As I said, I'm not vegan myself, but I do like to experiment with vegan baked goods. I think that's kind of fun. I loved these cookies. I will make them again. They did make quite a few, even though they're small. Gave some to 2 different families, and then I still had quite a few left myself. I may end up freezing some of them for later because it's always good to have a little treat in the freezer. So those are my Halloween recipes for this year. Are you making anything special for Halloween? I'd love to hear about it, so please leave me a comment. I'd like to say a special thank you to my Patreon subscribers. If you'd like to join us over there, I'll leave a link in the description so that you can do that. I hope you liked this video, and I hope it gave you a little bit of inspiration. If you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I post videos about food, vintage cookbooks, and retro recipes every week. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.